Hi kiddos, today for math we are going to begin our first unit on geometry. So the supplies that you're going to need today for our math lesson are our math interactive notebook, your anchor binder that has your blue math resources folder still inside. Remember, do not take out your folder, just have your anchor binder open to the blue folder. You need a glue stick, at least 3 different color highlighters, and a pencil. Mrs. Ling's going to use a pen so you can see the information that I'm going to write. So you're going to start by opening up your notebook. Inside you shall see that I have my flashcards. I attached mine to my inside of my notebook with a clip. I have my multiplication songs still inside to keep them in a safe location. And I'm going to open up to our table of contents. We've talked about the importance of having our table of contents nice and organized so we can quickly find the information we need. So before we write the page number, we're going to find out which page it is. So the table of contents still has room for us to add throughout the year. So the last page for table of contents is 9. So this page is going to be page 10 for our lesson. I'm going to write it in the top corner and then flip back to the first page of my table of contents. And I'm going to write the letters PG, meaning page, and then put a 10 to remind myself that's on page 10. As we start writing, I'm going to just take off the clip and move my flashcards so it's a little bit easier to write and I don't have a big bump underneath it. Today's lesson is going to be called lines, comma, rays, comma, and angles. So I write the title underneath where it says the lesson name, and then we're going to write today's date, which today's date is 8-21-20. We want to make sure that we always record the correct date so then we know what lessons we had completed on those days. Just in case you're absent one day, it'll help you understand which one you need to go back and find. So once I've written in my table of contents, I'm going to flip back to where page 10 is going to go. This is going to become our routine of how we have our notebooks set up. So this is going to be for math and reading and grammar and writing. We're always going to write in our table of contents first and then come back to put the teach page. So your anchor binder still has your blue folder inside. You open up your blue folder and once again on the left side is going to be your interactive notebook teach pages. So very carefully take off your black clip. Take the first page only that says page 10 on it out. You're going to also take out the second sheet because we're going to use that on page 11. Clip back the rest of the teach pages that we'll use next week. Close your folder and anchor binder and go ahead and place that away for now. With your teach pages, I want you to go ahead and we're going to be gluing these in. So I just set them in the right order. So the teach pages on the left, the right side is going to have our additional practice. So I just turn it over. I use my glue stick once again to make that frame on the outside with glue stick and then the X through the middle. Flip it over. And I attach it nice and smooth, no bumps. Take my page 11. This page, you have to turn it to the side. My page 11 is closer to the top. So when I flip it, I'm going to be able to rotate my notebook when we're on that page for our lesson. And then I'm going to go ahead and glue that one down as well. If you see a corner isn't staying down very well, you can just add a little bit of glue stick. So I'm going to just rewrite my page numbers just to make sure that I can see them above where I glued my teach page. So we're going to start by highlighting the title of our lesson. So use a color of your choosing. It does not have to be the same colors. If you would like to follow along and use the same colors, that's okay as well. And then I just usually leave them uncapped off to the side, so as we are working, we can come back to them. So the box that we're going to be using is our information of identifying some of our important vocabulary words. So we need to first notice that there are 3 columns that are identified with the title. We have the name or the vocabulary word. We have what it looks like, so an example of a visual representation, and then some information to help us remember what the definition is. So I'm going to take my highlighter and I'm just going to go ahead and highlight those 3 titles of the 3 columns. And then we're going to go through them one line at a time, highlighting the information that is important. I chose to keep the lightest color highlighter for this section. That way I don't accidentally cover up with a darker color any of the important information that might need to have for later on. So the first one is going to be a point. So I'm only highlighting the word point. This point is represented by a dot or a space in a location. And then when we jump over to the definition, we can then see that once again, it just gives us that same definition. A point is a location in space. So I'm only highlighting the information that is going to help me remember what that vocabulary word is identifying. The second one is the word line. This one is represented by 4 different examples of how to identify the visual that has been given to us. So we see that there are 2 points on the line, so we can label that with the 2 letters side by side. We can also label the same line by having a symbol that looks like a line on top that has the 2 arrows. We can have it represent going in the opposite direction and have the 2 letters side by side without a symbol, or we can have the same letters that were just given with the symbol of the line on top. When we look at the definition, we can see that a line is defined as it's extending without end in opposite directions. So the extending without end, the without end is the most important part. And we're going to just add that we typically see at the end of a line either arrows or we might have points. So those dots, that represents that it is a line. So the points are inside, the arrows are on the outside. The next vocabulary word is the words line segment. We are doing the same information about line, but this time the word segment changes what we're looking at. So the word segment means that it is a part of the actual line, and that is then shown visually by no longer having the arrows to say that it extends, but it's like we took a pair of scissors and cut those points off to be the very edge of that line. So a line segment means it's part, so we're going to jump to this section. Segment means part, and a line segment is part of a line. It is named by 2 endpoints. So knowing that there are 2 points at the end to say those are my pieces that I cut off, that's going to help us remember the difference between a line and a line segment. When we go back to the example, we can then see that we're representing it with the same 2 letters that are the points. The difference, though, is the symbol that's above. When we were talking about just a line, we had 2 arrows at the end. That represents going on in either direction. A line segment does not have the arrows. So make sure you know the difference between the arrows on the edge mean a line that continues to go on in both directions. The line segment means it's been cut and it's only a part of that line. The next term is the word ray. A ray visually looks like the combination of the 2 line and line segment. One of the sides is a segment, so it's been cut on one side, but the opposite side has the arrow, meaning it's going to go on forever and ever in only one direction. So we're going to go ahead and define this by highlighting where the word ray, and it says a ray has 1 endpoint and extends without end in one direction. So we want to make sure we highlight that section as well. And it says a ray is named using 2 points, so we still name those points, but we need to make sure that the symbol is representing what is visually shown. So in the first one, we look at the points, the names given by having the letters. So if the segment or the cut piece is an M, the symbol has to represent right above it that that section is the segment, so there's no arrow in the symbol. The portion of the ray that has the arrow closest to it in our symbol above has to have an arrow above that same point. So the arrow is going in the same direction as the actual example. The next part is an angle. The angle is represented by putting two rays or two line segments together that join at an endpoint. We call this endpoint a vertex. So we're going to highlight that word vertex. And we say that this is similar to an elbow of an arm. So if we think of an angle like an arm, we have an elbow that joins our forearm and the upper part of our arm and allows us to move it. So we think of our angles as an arm. So this particular angle has 3 points, one being the vertex, the other 2 being on the rest of the rays. So we're going to say an angle is 2 rays or line segments, and they share an endpoint. When we represent this symbol by naming it, we have several different ways to actually do the naming. So we can either put the word angle in front of the points that we've represented, or we put the symbol that looks like, and I'm going to just draw this so we can see a little bit better. It looks like I've drawn an L that's almost been smushed. That represents the symbol of an angle. You need to remember, though, when we name it with the points, we have to go in order. They cannot be broken apart. So when I name it, I can either start at the first point, go to the vertex, and extend to the last point, and that is what's represented in the first portion. The next portion in the middle is going in the opposite direction. So I just start with the other ray, go to the vertex, and back up. And this one has a third unique way to name it. If we look at the letter that's represented at the vertex, I can name this ray by just naming the vertex. So it says angle Y, we're just using the word angle, or we can use the symbol for angle and still represent it with the letter that's the vertex. So for angles, there's 3 different ways to name it, making sure that you look at all the points. Either they stay in order, it doesn't matter the direction, or by just labeling the vertex. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and put the name vertex next to that point. The next section is going to be telling us the different types of angles. So I'm going to write that on my sheet. So types of angles. And on this sheet, we are going to be going over the 4 different types of angles. There is another one that we'll be talking about later. So the first one we're going to identify is what we call a right angle. A right angle forms a square corner. So we can see that this square is already given to us. So we push that square or box right against the wall meeting the floor, and it fits perfectly. This also represents what we call a 90-degree angle. And I'm going to give us our reminder that we're going to say this is when the wall meets the floor. Just remember that whatever I'm highlighting on my teach page, any of the helpful hints that I'm writing, I expect that you're writing in yours as well. If you are getting behind, remember you can always pause the video and then continue on once you've caught up. The second angle is called an acute angle. This is an angle that opens less than a right angle. So if we said a right angle was the wall meeting the floor, acute is anything smaller than that. So we call this one cute and tiny because it says acute, so we say cute and tiny. So that means it's small. This is less than 90 degrees. The third type is what we call an obtuse angle. An obtuse angle opens more than a right angle, but less than a straight angle. So if we said a right angle is a wall meeting the floor, and we said it's more than that, we know that then our angle can open up. It does not go as far as having a straight angle, which we'll review in just a moment. So when we talk about an obtuse angle, I want you to think of Thanksgiving and maybe one of your relatives sitting in a recliner. After you eat all that yummy food that your family has made and your belly is so full, oftentimes we like to sit back and let our belly have some space so we can breathe. So we think of the angle being a recliner, and your belly that's so full of Thanksgiving dinner is able to breathe. So that recliner is the obtuse angle. So we're going to mark this as more than 90 degrees. The one part that we need to not forget is the and less than a straight angle. So it says more than 90 degrees, and then we're going to put also less than, and we're about to learn that a straight angle is 180 degrees. So going into that information we just talked about, a straight angle forms a perfect line. So I'm going to underline line. And that means it's exactly 180 degrees from one point going through the vertex to the second point. So if it makes a half circle, and we're going to put that in our quotation marks, so half of a circle, then it represents a straight angle. The last section on our left side is asking us to draw and label an example of the figure. So it's important for us to look at the symbol above the letters or points to know what they're asking us to draw. So this first example has a straight line, and I look back at my box of examples. It does not have any arrows, so I need to look. A point doesn't have anything above it. The lines have 2 arrows. The line segment has just a straight line, so that matches. So I'm going to write next to it line segment. And now I know that I'm looking at the example in the chart to represent a line segment. So that tells me that I need to have 2 points on the end because I cut the 2 pieces. So I'm going to draw a dot, try my best to make a straight line, and a dot on the opposite side. Once I've drawn my example, I have to go ahead and put my points inside. So I look back at the example and it says points P and then Q. Now I want you to pause the video, try number 2 and number 3 on your own, look at the symbols, look back at your chart, and then draw your 2 examples. When you're done, play the video and you can check your work. This next part, you should have then been able to see the symbol. Looking back up at your chart, there is only 1 arrow on the end of the symbol, so that tells me this is going to be a ray. I look at the example to see which of the symbols is represented. So the arrow is pointing in the right direction, so my example is going to be like the one in the chart on the top. So I have a point with an arrow going towards the right, and then I add my second point right before that arrow. The letters have to be in the same direction as they're written. So the first point is K, the second point is J. This last example says it's an obtuse angle because of the symbol. So I'm going to just remind myself this is an angle that has the 3 points F, G, and H. Well, we've talked about the importance of keeping those letters in the same order without taking your finger off if I were tracing. So this middle letter is representing the elbow or the vertex of the angle. So it says obtuse. it tells me obtuse above is more than 90 degrees, less than 180. It looks like a recliner with a Thanksgiving belly. So it doesn't matter which direction. So just to show you another example of obtuse, I'm going to open it in the other direction, still a recliner, just facing the other way. I'm going to then put 3 dots. One is my vertex, one is on the bottom ray, the other is on the top. I'm going to add some arrows. It does not need arrows. The arrows just mean I'm adding two lines. If I kept it with just the dots, that would have been line segments of my angle. And then I'm going to place my letters going in the correct direction. So you can place them either F, G, and H, or you could have placed the F at the top, G has to be in the middle, and H on the other side. As long as if you put your finger on the first point and then you're able to continue to slide your finger using the same exact order without lifting, then you've put them in the correct spots. Once we're done with the teach page, we're now going to do some more practice on the right page. So go ahead and flip your page so you can see a little bit better. And this is just helping us with some practice and identification. So the first part says for us to draw the angle in the box below and describe each angle's attributes. Attributes are the characteristics that help us identify what that is on the lines provided. So the box is the example of our drawing, and then the lines are our descriptions. So the first one, a right angle. You may pause the video to draw and then start the video to check. So a right angle is a wall and a floor that has a box pushed between, and you can have your arrows or you can have 2 points to say those are line segments. Then the characteristics or the attributes would be an angle of exactly 90 degrees. The next is an obtuse. So once again, if we check back on our teach page, it says it's a Thanksgiving recliner. So we've drawn our recliners in different directions. Now we're going to show our recliner upside down, because sometimes we feel upside down. So I'm going to draw it as if my recliner is upside down. So I'm talking about this bottom angle. So I drew a connector just to represent the angle in which I'm representing. So when we look at our example, we can then show that the definition is an angle of more than 90 degrees and less than 180 degrees. Our third example is acute, and this is our hint that we said, oh, it's so cute and tiny. So we're going to make an angle. This time, once again, I'm going to do it in a different direction. I start by drawing my vertex, and then I draw my 2 rays that are kind of close together, just as long as we understand what the definition is going to be in just a moment. And I draw my connector just to represent this is the angle I'm going to identify. So an acute and tiny, acute angle is an angle less than 90 degrees. And then my straight starts with a vertex. This time I'm going to draw my straight line through at an angle. I'm going to draw my 2 points. And this definition is an angle of exactly 180 degrees. So we were able to remind ourselves and review the 4 different types of angles and then their attributes or how we would describe them. This challenge question I want you to try to think about doing on your own. So that means that you're going to pause the video, try it, and then come back to check your work. The challenge question says to match each vocabulary word to the corresponding letter below and write the vocabulary word on the blank provided. So the words that we have available are in this dotted box. That's like our word bank. and we're going to insert it on the letter line that represents. So the first one is a right angle. A right angle, you should have been able to place that by point D or answer D, because this is a wall meeting a floor, and I cross it out. That way I can keep track and organize of which ones I've used. The next is a acute angle, so it's a cute and tiny angle. So when I look at all these angles that are here, the only cute and tiny one is represented right here at A. So A would be a acute angle. My next one is obtuse. Obtuse, that O is like our belly on Thanksgiving. So an obtuse is like the belly, so we're looking for one that looks like a recliner. So when we look at the recliner, we're looking at the symbol that represents an angle, so which ones we're measuring, and that's letter G. So I'm going to write the word obtuse angle. The next one is a straight angle. Straight angle represents 3 points, one being the vertex, and it's in a straight line. And this is going to be the symbol representing the angle being measured. So we're going to say this is a straight angle. The last 4 are the ones that were in our box on our teach page, where we were given examples and definitions. So the first is a point. So a dot that represents a place in a location. So when we see point, we see a dot that represents a place on a line. So we're going to write the word point. The next is a ray, and looking at our definition, a ray has one endpoint and extends without end, and then it's going to have one end that's going to be a line segment. So it's cut off only on one side, the other side goes on. So when we think of ray, we think of E. There's one point, that's where we cut, and then it goes into the right side direction on forever. So we place the word ray. The next one, a line. A line, the definition says that it extends without end in opposite directions. So a line goes on forever on the left side and the right side. So when we see 2 arrows, that tells me that that is representing going on forever. And then that means the last one, a line segment, has 2 places on the end that have been cut. So it's a section or a piece of it. So we're going to name the last one line segment. So today's lesson, we were able to use the information that we're learning with our geometry flashcards to then identify a vocabulary word, a visual example, definitions, and then how to use that information to identify when given those things in our practice. The last thing you're going to do is you're going to take your anchor binder back out, not removing your blue folder, keeping it inside, but opening it back up. On the right-hand side, you have a section that's called Math Homework Resources. This is not always going to just be homework. This is going to be additional practice. So when you look at this packet, the first one is going to have the title for the lesson. So if you keep your papers in order, as soon as we're done with the lesson, I'll refer you to this packet for you to then take it out for us to work on. Then you place your paper clip back on, keeping that packet nice and snug. And then you keep your notebook in a spot on your desk where you can have it open and refer to it. This particular worksheet, we're only going to do the odd numbers, or sorry, not the odd numbers, the even numbers. So go ahead and write even numbers, and then you can circle it. The even numbers, you then go and circle as a reminder of what to complete. So the even numbers would be 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. We flip it over to the back, and we're still going on with the evens. So 2, 4, and 6. This page is expected to be worked on and completed. You are to submit a picture of not only your homework page on both sides, but your notebook completed as well. We will do a visual check also during our class meeting on Monday to double check that your notebook is set up, and then we will review our homework together. If you have questions, please make sure you are reaching out, but make sure that today you are submitting a picture of your math notebook. Both sides can be in one picture, and then a picture of your homework or classwork as soon as you're done. We will review the answers together on Monday morning.